Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who has helped me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Joan Quinlan for a third episode, where she continues her life journey telling us about the various traumas she has experienced in life. She still has recurring thoughts that activate different emotions with her. She describes how these various activations can trigger various emotions in her and how she's dealing with this. Her story can help us as we are working with others to deal with traumas and various emotions they are working with, and we can help them work through. Marty, what are some takeaways we learned from Joan in this third episode?
Ron, as Joan explains the trauma that she has been through and how she has come through it, she has a passion, you can hear it in her voice, to help anyone that has experienced the same thing that she has, and how she has the desire to help that person through the trauma.
It's a great life lesson learned, because there are people going through trauma, but they won't express it to you until we have gained their trust to have them feel free to express their life with us. Let's listen and learn together. Joan, it is great to have you back with us. You have some very unique life experiences, and when I say unique, I mean they're probably unique in the context of personal trauma, and some things you have overcome, you are overcoming, and you might even say that overcoming trauma is a life journey. But our listeners are going to be very interested in just some whatever you feel you want to share about trauma. Maybe even start out with a definition of trauma so that the listeners are mentally in tune with you. But Joan, it's great to have you back with us.
My tongue got twisted. Ron and Marty, I am so delighted to be back and talking about this. Earlier, I had talked about the issue of substance use disorder, and often, especially with women, trauma and substance use disorder often are connected. But the definition that I'd like to use comes from the Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. Hopefully they're going to stay intact, is what I'm really hoping over the next couple of years. But their definition is, and I actually worked for them for 26 years. Trauma is an event or circumstance that results in physical, emotional, or life-threatening harm. It's very simple.
Yep.
An event or a circumstance that results in physical, emotional, or life-threatening harm.
Let me ask you, are you recovering from, have you experienced both the emotional and the physical? Do you feel at liberty to respond to that?
I have experienced all three:
Okay.
physical, emotional, and life-threatening.
Wow.
Yes. And the I think what's important, and I don't know if the time has come to think of a word other than trauma, because so many people, and even I, for years, associated trauma with being in a you know a natural disaster or a school shooting. These events that we hear, war. I mean, they're incredibly traumatic, and they also cause physical, emotional, and they're life threatening. Um, but there's a realization that a lot of things that happen to us in life are, I mean, about a couple years ago, and not only have I experienced all these, I mean, this is a love of mine to help people heal. Um, we're coming further along, because we used to talk about little T and big T. Big T being those, natural disaster, catastrophic events, 9/11, and little T being um, loss, grief, or, well, death of a loved one, bullying, emotional, physical, sexual abuse. Oh my goodness, I can go on and on. Um, Childhood neglect is a huge one, and there's just so many of them, and so many, including me, so many of us, and I started experiencing trauma, abuse. So when I talk about trauma, I'm kind of incorporating grief, loss, and abuse in it as well. And I experienced sexual abuse by my brother when I was like 4. And and I've had, and this is another kind of, like maybe little, it's not a little T, but it's in the traumatic, when I guess it's in the traumatic, it all relates, it's all traumatic, I guess is what I can say. Um, when these unexpected and harmful life events happen to us, there's, some of us that just say, okay, stuff the emotions, stuff the pain, and just keep moving forward. Be resilient, be strong. Those are the worst things that we can. I mean, resiliency is great, absolutely. Stuffing the feelings, stuffing the pain, no, not so much. And so I started off by saying, when I first started studying and learning and being taught trauma informed, healing modalities, it's now come to the place where we now have different categories of trauma. And I there's three types of trauma: acute, which is like one single completely unexpected incident, maybe a very life-threatening car crash, um, a disastrous fall that where you end up in the hospital and, need time for recovery, both physical and emotional. Then there is where you experience repeated, prolonged events at any age, or maybe even throughout the course of your life. And that's kind of where I fit in, because through the whole course of my life since age 4, I'm now 73, I have had many, many, many unexpected and really heart-searing losses from death of loved ones. My father, my brother created a lot of trauma with his alcoholism that eventually ended up him dying of cirrhosis at 30. His drinking caused so much chaos, and it was constant until he died. I was 22 when he died. My father died unexpectedly and suddenly in a traumatic way when I was 19. And it's funny because I didn't realize that they're now even considering childbirth to be a traumatic event, not only for the baby, but the mom, especially like in my case, where I go in to have my baby and 13 hours later, I'm whisked to the OR for an emergency C-section. That's also now considered trauma. And then, the second C-section, and then, of course, that one was planned. And then their father left. So the unexpected, separation and divorce and being a single mother. And I every decade for me has been a major life event, and as I said, going back to my definition, is physical, emotional, or life-threatening harm.
Let me interject here,
Yes,
Joan.
please do.
And I want to ask you a question from an employer standpoint. Let's just say that you are a part of my staff, and Joan, I recognize your talent. You're very talented, very helpful. However, in a very candid conversation, let's just say that, Joan, I feel as if maybe something in our environment on any given day could activate something that, and I need to ask you, Joan, might whatever event trigger an emotion and you would have to say, I'm just done. I cannot recover from whatever for the rest of the day. Please bear with me, work with me. Is that how trauma can affect you? And is that how employment might work into all of this?
That's a great question. For me, my work gave me a lot of what I needed. I wasn't aware, actually, when I was working, what all of my life experiences did. And so I was brought up to be a perfectionist, and where I found myself and some of my self-worth, not all of it, but some of my self-worth was in how well I did at my career. Unfortunately, I had a literal fall at work that ended my career, which was yet another one of those completely unexpected life events. I also, which I think probably contributed to my fall, and boy, is this another topic I'd love to talk about at some point. I was going through early menopause, and I had been misdiagnosed and medicated for bipolar because of my mood swings, which was basically all I had at the time. And that fall and the way my manager handled it, because Ron would have been fabulous for a manager and their to have that kind of conversation, for the manager to be aware that, you know, they may be a stellar employee, but there's stuff that may have happened that activated them. And thank you for using the word activate, because that is a much more appropriate word to use, because what grief, loss, trauma, abuse does is it activates the nervous system. And of course, you know, the brain and all that. That kind of care and compassion is what people who have gone through life events need. I did not get that. I was basically shunned. And it took me a number of years to recover from not just the fall and the side effects, the constant migraines. I had a traumatic brain injury. So I think this is what's really important, is that many people exhibit behavioral, psychosocial, physical, trying to think, well, depression, anxiety, sleeplessness, all that, you know, fits into what happens as a result of trauma. It would have helped me tremendously to have had that kind of support from my workplace.
This is
I don't know if
very,
that answered your question, but
no, it does. This is very, very important to me, and where I think can help a lot of people. I want to ask you, and it is in the context of care and compassion, was your fall in hindsight very preventable? And I have no intention of blaming anybody, anything of that nature. Where I'm coming from with that question, Joan, if I am a caring, compassionate person, Joan is very valuable to my company. I need to adapt in whatever needs to be done. Not, well, let's not to give you special preference, but I choose to adapt too. And if I know of these kinds of things, I want to be conscious enough to walk around in, gosh, are there any tripping hazards, anything like that? And I want to be very conscious of Joan, who may be subject to, and I'm not even sure I'm asking her that I'm being all inclusive with my question, except I want to be very caring and compassionate, not blaming, but I just know that different things could happen. And I want to have the right culture, the right environment for Joan to be able to function at her best. That really is where I'm trying to come from, Joan. Was your fall in hindsight preventable?
my fall was definitely preventable. Real kind of short, try to make it as short as I can. Our office, we had a fairly large office with cubbies in the middle and offices around the perimeter. And I became aware, I was working for the public health service, and I very much into prevention, as you know. And so I became aware that our staff were getting sick a lot, calling in sick a lot. And I realized that I'd been there 10 in that building. In that building, I think 10 or 11 years. Our offices, the rugs had never been cleaned. And I don't even know when it had been painted. And so I started getting on my little soapbox to the higher up saying, we've got to get this office clean because it's a sick environment. What happened is, yes, they renegotiated the lease. We got new carpeting, we got painted. They had to tear all the cubbies down. Those of us in offices had to move everything out. What they didn't do was make an allowance to store all the boxes. And in between my office and my deputy's office was a little wall, and they had stacked boxes. I mean, we had boxes. I mean, it didn't occur to me at the time, but I mean, it was definitely an accident waiting to happen for someone. And a box had fallen in my doorway. And that particular morning, I actually had a meeting agenda in my hand and my cup of tea in the other hand. I did not see that box. And I don't understand the physics of it, fallen into the box, but I actually flew over the box, hit my secretary's countertop with my head. It turned me around and I landed on top of all the boxes that were stored under her countertop. So yes, it was 100% preventable had I or one of the other managers gone around and said, this is dangerous. But we were just so busy getting our work done. We, there's so, I just have to get off topic here for a minute. There's just so many incredibly hardworking federal government employees that have more work than they can handle. And they do the very best they can. And so we weren't really thinking about that. We were focused on, getting the work done, not making sure it was a safe environment.
No, and I think that's one thing that's very important, that yep, we can be so busy wrapped up in activity that we're not consciously and appropriately totally aware of the surroundings and what could happen. And it's unfortunate, Joan, like with your situation, well, it wasn't until we had a catastrophic accident that I said, well, yep, I just did not give enough thought to that. And so I do think it is a matter of we leaders being always appropriately aware of the environment, the people, and so forth. And are we providing the best opportunity for our employees to function at their best? And that's really where I'm coming from. And I'm addressing my question now from a leadership perspective.
Yes. And you're absolutely right. Not only, physical surroundings, but just, and I do want to say that, I mean, my graduate degree was in human development. Human development education. And so for me, as a manager, I without prying or anything like that, I was just always open to hearing what was going on with, with my staff, because I knew that would influence their work, and tried to create, the safe spaces for them. But that's just my makeup. Not all managers are that way. They're just focused on the bottom line. And well, if that person can't cut it, we'll find someone else, even though that may be the best person for the job. So, this whole issue of, and it comes back down to care and compassion of, as leaders and managers and influencers, of helping people understand that we have no idea what may be going on with someone. I mean, actually, I didn't even realize that I was in my 40s when that happened. I hadn't realized how much accumulated trauma and abuse and grief and et cetera that I had experienced. And And I also want to add the work. There's good stress and there's not good stress. Our work was good in a way. It was good stress because it was the Center for Substance Abuse Prevention, and my my branch was the public education branch, and we all loved our work, but we were overworked, overstressed. Right now, I can't even imagine what federal government employees are going through, because one thing that the federal government has always offered was safety. In fact, I would have liked to have had easier ways to deal with, and I only had one, fortunately, employee who didn't, one staff person who didn't, really cut the mustard, so to speak. I just think it's so important for, and in the federal government, we're not a for-profit, it's not for profit. Companies that are for profit are always looking at the bottom line, not understanding that they're being kind and compassionate and caring, and getting to know their employees is going to go a long way to helping their business succeed.
Mm-hmm. But I'm a believer, Joan, that when the people and processes are in place, the profits will follow if you're in a for-profit organization. And we as leaders need to be very aware of productivity and, okay, what is legitimately an overload? And well, you're just, and now we weigh that with, are you trained well to do the work you're doing?
Yes.
Or if you're being asked to do, let's just pick some numbers, 13 hours of work in a day within 8 hours,
Mm-hmm.
that's stress. And you're, after a while, and on any given day, you're going to take that stress home. And then
Absolutely.
when you're stressed out to work at home, you're going to bring that stress into the workplace. And I'm a believer as a leader that I know there's a continuum between home and the workplace. And so I want to be available to each. And we've got to be aware of any stress that's happening in the workplace could be happening at home. And if I'm aware of, and here I'm going to take the topic in a little bit different direction, if I have created a psychologically safe workspace, which I hope I have, you will feel free to tell me, well, Ron, tell you what, I've got this happening in the house, and say, I know, okay, work, home, a continuum. I'll never pry into your life, Joan, but I do want to be available to you to help you work through this, because I know the interaction of work and home, and I want to be available to you without prying into your personal life.
Well said.
And so, but I do think it's incumbent on us leaders to be very, very aware of people. Joan, I think you are experiencing the invisible scars of trauma, and
Correct.
there's nothing, well, quote, I mean, as we're looking at you right now, there's nothing visible, but it's all invisible, and you may have some visible. But anyway, my point is, we as leaders, effective leaders, need to be very aware of what are some of the signs of, and have I created a culture to where we can discuss this very openly, freely, and your job is not at risk for anything you say. I want to create a good environment for you because I know the better the environment, the more productive you'll be. And so that's a lot of what I'm saying, Joan.
I'm on your train, Ron.
And so for a person who is experiencing some sort of trauma, maybe experiencing something of what you're describing, but they do not feel they have the right home environment, the right work environment, and so forth to even discuss this, would you be an advocate of saying you got to find someone who will listen to you? And how would a person get out of the rut, so to speak? And I'm not sure I'm using the right terms.
Um, Again, another really good question. You ask such good questions. I think the very first is awareness that some of the symptoms that you're experiencing could be depression, anxiety, sleeplessness, pain, and I'm talking physical pain. There's the emotional pain as well. Um, Sleeplessness, depression, what other things? Agitation, trouble regulating emotions is a big one. People have experienced grief, loss, trauma, abuse. They're emotionally dysregulated. Uh, Migraines, gastrointestinal issues. I mean, I could just go on and on about the looking at yourself, and especially if you're, go to a doctor and they really can't find any, physical reason for it. Let me just segue just for a minute. I have a best friend I've known for almost 50 years now, who has lived for almost 40 years with a abusive, angry, controlling husband. I was always so concerned, and he also has, she's also been a caretaker because he's had a lot of health issues. I've always been concerned that she would die before him. What I'd never expected was the toll living like that. And I know we kind of veered away from the workplace, but I kind of want to go into what we can do, but to in between to talk about the effects of living like that. She now has Parkinsonian disease. It never occurred to me that it would affect her neurologically, and yet her brain scan does not show that she has Parkinson's, which is why it's called Parkinsonian disease. And I mean, I have lost track of the number of really good and also best female friends who have, I know, had experienced, this collective trauma of grief, loss, abuse, and they died. I mean, they died early. They died young. Um, Women that I thought that I would be, friends with till my expiration date left this world far too soon because of all the life events, the harmful life events that they had experienced, abuse, and now bullying is such a big issue, and oh my gosh, that takes such a toll. That it comes back. I want to come back to the awareness. How are you feeling? What are your symptoms? If there's nothing physically that the medical profession can, Western medical profession can pinpoint, it's time to then start look at, okay, what have I experienced in life that was painful, but I stuffed those emotions?
And I will interject right here, Joan. I'm not focusing on the workplace, but what I am focusing on to our listeners, be aware and choose, hopefully, to appropriately and effectively engage with people. It is my belief, and please correct me if you have not experienced this or if anything different, but when you're working with a person who has these invisible scars, whether you are a supervisor or a friend, doesn't matter what the relationship is, if we are appropriately aware of, we, I think, should at least attempt to engage, not in a case where we're not wanted, but I want to be available too. And I want to be hopefully uh, willing to work with you. And if everything lines up, Joan, that yep, it seems like the personalities are correct and so forth, maybe together we can help you through whatever you're getting through. In I'm saying what I'm saying is I am not a trained certified therapist, but I don't think you always need to be a trained certified therapist to at least reach out and show compassion.
Absolutely. Yes. And let me also, if I may, add a few more things
Please
for
do.
listeners to look at in this awareness phase. And it includes, and anxiety. Does one, and people are going through the roof, and of course COVID didn't help that at all. But it's being able to regulate your emotions. Do you fly off the handle easily? Or alternatively, do you not say anything because you stuff it because you're ashamed or whatever? Do you feel kind of like a disconnection to a disconnection from yourself or your emotions, or maybe even have a hard time describing that emotion, or even know what that emotion is? You might have a distorted sense of self. Um, Oftentimes, especially with women, that shows up in body image. You know, women often, I heard this expression once, and I don't know if it's so true, but honestly, I've found it to be true so far, is when women look in the mirror, they see everything wrong. When men look in the mirror, they see everything right.
Okay, I
So,
accept that.
okay. One thing I think is really important in all this is humor. I mean, it's the ability to laugh is such great medicine. But let me, if I can just go through a few more.
Sure.
Do you have memory lapses?
Oh, certainly. Periodically we do.
Well, for me, because of what happened when I was 4 and 5 with my brother, I have so few memories of childhood, of elementary school, of high school. I mean, I have gotten to the point now where I'm not going to go to any more reunions because they're talking about things that happened that I had no idea. I don't remember. I mean, my kids are always saying, and when I say kids, they're now 49 and 51, but they're always like, Mom, don't you remember when blah, blah, blah? And, I sometimes say, well, you know what it is when, how it is when you get to be my age. But, and sometimes I just sort of shake my head. And other times I say, t- tell me, tell me a little more about it. um, Constantly being on alert. And, and that's like right now, because of a traumatic incident I had a little over a year ago, and the way I've healed, I've been falling a lot. So I am now constantly on alert to not, to uh, avoid that. Disassociation, uh, trouble sleeping, having nightmares, having difficulty in relationships, low self-esteem, headaches, upset stomach, chronic illness. I mean, that's a pretty good list to look at and start to think about. I mean, for me, when I started really getting into this, trauma arena, it became so clear to me how much work I still needed to do. I had done a lot, especially after my fall at work, and the way my manager handled it, which was absolutely 100% opposite of what we were talking about earlier. And and my healing, and you're absolutely right when you said this is a lifelong journey. My healing came about through all of the um, modalities that are not Western medicine. They're Eastern modalities. Um, so that's, I think, really a major first step. I wanted to also mention two seminal books that I highly encourage your listeners to consider. I mean, there's a lot of books out on trauma, but the two excellent ones are The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma by Bessel, that's Bessel, Van der Kolk, MD, who's a psychiatrist. And again, it's one of the seminal works. And then the other is Waking the Tiger, Healing Trauma by Peter Levine. And start first becoming aware and seeing, are these symptoms you're having? And, in our society, there's just such a need to stuff our emotions, to not show our emotions, to be strong. It's still the old pull up the bootstraps and keep moving forward. And, that's all great and fine. However, and the interesting thing about it is that trauma not transforms, transmits through
Transcends.
DNA for 12 generations.
Yep.
12 generations. So for me, it was really important to break the cycle of that, in spite of, the things I've experienced, and to not only heal myself, but also to hopefully change that DNA from carrying forward with my grandchildren.
Yep. I think I totally understand what you're saying, Joan. And on behalf of our listeners, I want to thank you for being so willing to share a lot of a painful part of your life. But I want to encourage our listeners to engage compassionately, with understanding, with a grateful heart, those who are experiencing some things that maybe we are not. But if I am interpreting you correctly, if we have the right compassion, the right understanding, we can help people possibly overcome, albeit it's a life journey, but at least a better cope with, and hopefully I'm using the right terms, the different things in life that are causing various adverse activations. But Joan, thank you so much for sharing with us. And we do understand and appreciate the life journey you are on. And we do thank you so much for being willing to share.
Well, thank you, Ron. I would love to go. We have no time now, but I, I know we're running out of time. There are so many. What I want to offer, though, your listeners is, is the first awareness piece, and then what you do with it, because there are so many wonderful ways, and often somatic work is what's important. And there's now a lot of different therapeutic modalities that are successfully helping people to allow themselves to feel the pain, to work through it and move forward with their life. So I really, 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 really wanted to end on that hopeful note as well. You know, it's educational, but it's also hopeful because I really firmly believe that all we all want to do is just live the best life we can.
Great. Joan, thank you so much. And we will look into another episode of just how we can discover the various modalities of helping people through a life journey, but always improving.
I would love that. And again, I'd love to work with people and help people. I mean, basically, I really feel one of my missions in life is to help people heal and grow and move forward through pain and actually, you know, have a life that is far different than they were experiencing prior to that.
Thank you so much for sharing, Joan. We'll be back with you.
Okay. Thanks, Ron.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life experiences with you.
The Cooper Culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, Marty, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.